In this video, you're going to learn about some of the most dangerous cars of all time. Designers and manufacturers have made a huge number of improvements to the vehicles that they've created over the past century. They're now faster, more fuel efficient, and luxurious than ever before. However, the biggest improvement has come in the safety department. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Maybe it's bad engineering, or perhaps the vehicles rushed to the market too quickly. Sometimes it's a good idea brought to customers before it's time. And others, it's a bad idea at any time. In other cases, the vehicle's faults come from careless construction and cheap materials. No matter the reasons, there have been plenty of vehicles on the road that could have been rolling advertisements for the coffin industry. Luckily for you, you clicked on this video, because today you're going to learn about some of the most dangerous cars of all time. First on the list is the DeLorean DMC-12. Yes, the iconic Back to the Future car. The DeLorean may have earned its place as one of the most iconic cars in the 1980s, but it was also extremely dangerous. When John DeLorean left General Motors in the 1970s to build a safety sports car, I really hoped DMC-12 wasn't what he had in mind. Stainless steel body panels mounted on a fiberglass frame didn't help the car in crash tests. In fact, after a 50-mile-per-hour impact, the car looked like a crushed can. The car's famous gull-wing doors were also a disaster. If the car rolled over, its occupants would have no way to escape. Out of 10,000 cars built, it's estimated that only 6,000 of them actually survived till this day. I wonder what happened to the rest of them. Up next, we have the Yugo GV. The Yugo was a poorly built Siberian version of the 15-year-old Italian Econobox, an instant punchline. The GV, standing for great value, was billed as America's cheapest new car, and its atrocious build quality and unreliability made it easy to figure out why. A Yugo infamously made headlines in 1989 when its lightweight, terrible handling, boxy design mixed with winter weather resulted in it being blown off Michigan's Mackinac Bridge, plunging 31-year-old Leslie Ann into Lake Michigan's icy waters 172 feet below. According to witnesses, Leslie was traveling north on the bridge when for some unknown reason she veered suddenly to the left and onto the bridge's median, a 2-foot wide strip of steel about 4 inches high. She skidded down the median a full 70 feet before swerving back to the right across both lanes. She then jumped an inner guardrail where she skidded another 45 feet before falling over the side. It took her 6 harrowing seconds to hit the water. Officials at the bridge called it a freak accident and refused to admit that the bridge's design, or road, or weather conditions had anything to do with it. Instead, the car's lightweight and poor design proved to be the culprit. Witnesses claimed that wind was a factor, and that as far as they could tell, Leslie's blue Yugo was caught by a sudden gust and appeared to be lifted from the road, off the bridge, and into the water. This scandal only added to the Yugo's reputation as a death trap, plus a host of costly federal emissions recalls forced Yugo out of the American market after 1992. Up next, we have the Pontiac Fiero. The ambitious 2-seat car was designed to be a sporty commuter that would return Pontiac back to its 1960 glory days. Launched in 1984, the Fiero was an initial success, but a design flaw and some seriously incompetent engineering led to a wave of engine fires that affected the first years of the cars. Luckily, the fires caused no deaths, and the issue had been fixed for the 1985 model year. But by 1987, 260 Fieros had gone up in flames. The Fiero's reputation took a beating in the press, and the model was discontinued after 1988. Up next, we have the Ford Model T. Now I know, how could one of the most iconic automobiles in American history be one of the most dangerous? Well, during the time this car was created, safety wasn't a good enough reason to up the expenses of production. The Ford Model T is undoubtedly an automotive icon. During its 19-year production run, Ford sold more than 15 million cars and transformed America into the world's first automotive powerhouse. Unfortunately, the Model T was still a complete death trap, and I won't even mention the fact that Henry Ford famously refused to add front brakes to the car to keep costs down. We'll just let that one slide. Up next, we have the Chevy Couvert. Ralph Nader famously built his career on demonizing the Couvert in his 1965 book, Unsafe at Any Speed. While the Couvert wasn't a particularly safe car, the book highlighted many of the safety issues that every car of the era had. In the early 60s, features like the collapsible steering column, 3-point seatbelts, padded dashboards, and 2-circuit brake systems that were used to prevent brake failure had yet to be standardized, causing most cars to be shockingly dangerous by today's standards. Nader asserted that the Couvert stood out because of its swing axle suspension and rear engine layout that contributed to dangerous oversteer. But by 1965, Chevy did have the kinks worked out. Unfortunately, the Couvert's sales would never really recover. Up next, we have the Porsche 911. The Porsche 911 is considered to be one of the greatest sports cars in the world. Unfortunately, Porsche took a bad idea and refined it to brilliance. Porsche's engineering engineers first tried to solve the car's weight imbalance by putting iron weights in the front bumpers of early cars. By the early 1970s, the 911's iconic whale-tail spoiler and front air dam did wonders to keep the car planted to the ground at high speeds. Today, the car's fantastic all-wheel drive system and traction control have ironed out most of the modern 911's homicidal urges, yet the older cars are still undeniably dangerous as well. Up next, we have the Ford Pinto. Yes, you guys aren't surprised this one's on the list, but yes, the Ford Pinto has a horrible reputation. By the early 1970s, Detroit automakers were concerned with two things: competing with imported cars and keeping costs down. The Pinto was the worst of both worlds. True, its inline four-cylinder engine saw service into 2001, and its frame was a favorite of kit car builders for decades. But Ford's refusal to install a $1 part to prevent the gas tank from rupturing during a rear-end collision is what the car is infamously remembered for. After an expose in Mother Jones in 1977, it was revealed that Ford knew about the defect and opted to pay out individual lawsuits rather than shell out an extra dollar per car to fix the issue. By 1978, the public outcry was so strong that Ford reluctantly recalled 1.5 million Pintos. Ford was unfortunately a little bit late to the party, as around 1,000 people had already died as a result of the car's faulty fuel system. Up next, we have the Chevy Cobalt. Like the Pinto, the Chevy Cobalt was an entry-level compact that was a strong seller for the better part of the decade. Also like the Pinto, it's at the center of one of the worst automotive scandals in history. The unassuming Cobalt is a root of General Motors ignition recalls, where a defect in its ignition switch can cause cars to suddenly turn off at high speeds, deactivating safety systems, an issue that GM knew about and also tried to cover up. To date, there have been over 90 fatalities acknowledged by GM. Up next, we have the Ford Bronco 2. During its 7-year model run, the Ford Bronco 2 was a huge success for Ford. Based on the Ford Ranger's pickup, this little rugged truck was instrumental in kicking off the SUV craze, along with the Chevy S10 Blazer and the Jeep Cherokee. But the car's tall height, short wheelbase, narrow width, all made it dangerously susceptible to rollovers. During an official investigation in 1990, it was uncovered on average 70 people died a year when their Broncos rolled over, giving it the highest rollover fatality rate of any vehicle tested. Last and not least, we have the Ferrari 458 Italia. One of the longest running stereotypes in the automotive world is that Italian supercars always explode. For the Ferrari 458, this actually proved to be true, because the vehicle had a horrible reputation for spontaneously catching fire. In 2012, Ferrari recalled over 1,200 cars. This was due to an adhesive that was used on the car's inner fenders that turned out to be highly flammable and were actually placed way too close to the exhaust. It was a simple fix, but the damage was already done. 3 years after the recall, the jokes about flaming Ferraris have only gotten worse. While the Ferrari's fires were made light of because there are no deaths or major injuries caused by them, it made the car a hot topic of controversy till this very day. That concludes the list of the most dangerous cars of all time. Let me know what you guys think of the list. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. Also, if you like what you see at the channel, subscribe. Also, don't forget to put post notifications on so you don't miss an upload. Until next time.